Please welcome your panelists for Japan's Economy Jump-Started, moderated by Milken Institute Asia Fellow and Chairman of the Japan Intelligence Initiative, Kotaro Tamura.
Very good morning. Thank you for coming to the best panel in whole program. So you're a lucky guy. The hottest and the sexiest panel in Milken Institute 2018. You're a lucky guy. So why? Because most of you are investors or investment-related people. So investment is all about finding miscalculation and undervaluation. I think that is Japan as a product. So you will find it. I'm chairing Japan session for 4 years in a row here in Los Angeles, including summit in Singapore 7 times. I'm really sorry for the last panelist. We have always having a great panels for years, but this is the best panelist ever I had. Don't tell to the last panelist. So you're lucky again. So allow me to introduce my fellow great panelists. This year we have diversity. That's another good reason to say best panelist. So Japan is struggling for the gender equality, and Prime Minister Abe tried to push women up. So Aya-san, you look very young, and why you're here and what you do.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to this great conference. It's my pleasure to be here. So just so you know, Kotaro asked me to put few jokes into this talk. So please pay attention and try to laugh when that happens. That was first joke. So my name is Aya Murakami. I'm involved in engagement investment, which is sometimes described as activist investment. I manage my family funds focused on Japanese equities, and I buy undervalued stocks. Our investment philosophy is corporate governance in terms of maximizing shareholders' value, which emerged only recently. So there is some similar background between Mr. Milken and my father. As you know, Mr. Milken was called the king of junk bond, but then he was convicted of insider trading, and he made a great comeback, such as establishing this conference. My father, Yoshiaki Murakami, who used to run the fund, so-called Murakami Fund, back in early 2000s, he was also convicted of insider trading, but we're seeing moving forward the emphasizing corporate governance. So thank you.
Wow, it sounds very big. Great. So I ask you the question later, but you think still Japan is a good buy?
Yes, I'm very bullish on Japanese equities.
Okay, come back to you. Thank you. Mr. Lawrence, your name doesn't sound like Japanese. Why you're here?
I'm the only non-Japanese on the panel, and I'm extremely honored to be in the presence of so many wise people. So I'm helping you pull down the average of the quality of the speakers. No, I think the reason that I'm here is, even though I'm the only non-Japanese on the panel, I think I'm the biggest fan of Japan. And you know, in terms of finding,
how do you prove?
How do I prove? I've been to Japan over 300 times, and I go every 2 weeks. So, and my wife as well. No, and I think that there's a major mismatch as well, because rarely do you have such a great, amazing country like Japan, whereas a first world country, a developed country, but with amazing infrastructure and great culture, but yet the inbound tourism, it's still way below average. And so again, that's a huge opportunity for growth in the future. And you know, I am, you know, I represent and I founded one of the larger integrated resort gaming/entertainment companies in the world, and I'm extremely interested in contributing to the Japanese economy and tourism.
Okay, I'll come back to you also, but you're ready to make a huge investment.
Huge.
Thank you, thank you. So Ochi-san, you are the policymaker, only policymaker in this panel. And you are in charge of fiscal and economic policy and financial market as well. So your relative, former Prime Minister, current Finance Minister, Aso-san, used to be here twice. So he really likes the conference. But now you are taking over his mission. So
too huge.
Oh.
Huge responsibility.
Well, you're very different type. So you're very, in a sense, very secured person. So
He pushed me to talk a lot today.
So I want to have a lot of questions to ask, but before that, can you talk a bit about yourself, your background before
background,
politicians and become politicians? What do you do, please?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me here. And I'm now a member of parliament and state minister of the cabinet office in charge of economic and fiscal policy and growth strategy and financial services.
And you're also a member of the BOJ policy committee.
Yes,
Oh,
yes. So I'm here for answering to any question
Oh, good.
about Japan's economy, I think. And before becoming an MP, I was working in the banking sector for 13 years. So I like finance and then the businesses, and I'm bullish for Abenomics.
Good.
That's my
Japan is a good buy.
yeah.
Yes. So, Kumagai-san, I saw your face many times in Japanese TV. You're a TV star, very famous commentator in Japanese business programs. And you are an economist and advising to Prime Minister Abe in many issues. So could you talk a bit about your role?
Yes. Thank you, Tamura-san. I'm very honored to be here. I'm a chief economist of Daiwa, and my name is Kumagai. Kuma means bear in Japanese, but I am not bearish about the Japanese economy. And also, I am a TV commentator of Japanese leading economic program. But I am not so handsome as Tamura-san.
But your necktie is shining.
Yes.
Don't do that before me, sir.
This is Beverly Hills, yes.
Okay.
And also, I am a member of the Prime Minister Abe's Executive Committee on the promotion of an IR. So I strongly convinced that IR is very important for the Japanese economy. And first of all, I'd like to ask two simple questions for you. The first question is, what is the strongest bond in the world? Raise your hand if you know the answer. Strongest bond. The answer is James Bond. The second question is, what is the strongest economy among the major advanced countries? To answer this question, I am here. Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
So he's a TV guy. So probably the very unique person in the sense that we don't invite the same guy to the Japan panel again, but I saw you in Japan panels a few years back. But that means American Institute, and we like you having again here. So you are the very successful entrepreneur in the area of finance. So could you talk a bit about yourself, background?
Yes, Daisuke Iwase. I'm the co-founder and president of LifeNet Insurance Company. We're a digital life insurance company, and I think that symbolizes two different aspects of Japan. Life insurance has been one of the most successful industries in the financial services post-war. It has grown with the growth of the economy and the growth of the population, and it has struggled with the deflation and everything, the recession that's been happening over the last 20 years. The digital side, we are trying to disrupt this huge industry using technology and innovation, and it is not a very easy task. We are in our 10th year in business. We're already public, but we're still trying to open up and change the old Japan. But I see here today in the room my fellow colleagues from the entrepreneurial sector and also people like Aya who represent change in Japan. And I feel, as Tamura-san mentioned in the introductory remarks, that there are so many understated or underrepresented parts of Japan that create huge opportunities for investment, and I hope we can touch upon that in this session.
Great, thank you. So allow me to introduce very briefly on myself. I'm Kotaro Tamura, Asia Fellow stationed in Singapore Milken Institute. And the same time professor at NUS, National University of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. I'm teaching public policy geopolitics mainly to business leaders. And before that, I was a fellow member of the Diet with Ochi-san. I was a parliamentary secretary. I used to be in the same position, economic policy making, fiscal policy making, and the financial market under Prime Minister very fast administration. And my family business is the largest bespoke business manufacturer in Japan. So if you like my suits, come to me later, and I give you double price. It's a Beverly Hills price. So our market share in Japan is 80%, so it's good. Thank you. So go back to the real issue. So Aya-san, you told us Japan is still a good buy. Why? And what's the reason behind? Could you show your analysis to us?
So as an investor, I'm very bullish on Japanese equities. There are a few reasons about it, but I think activism investment is going to be the last frontier of Japanese investment opportunities. So let me answer to you with a few slides. So can you put up the slide? The first slide. Okay. So this slide shows the historical market capitalization between US and Japan. So where the circles are, that's 1989. Japan's market cap was even bigger than the US at that time. After 1990, Japan and US had the same market cap, which was around 5 trillion US dollars. Japan's price to book value was around 2.3. US price to book value was around 1.3. After 30 years, as you see, US market cap became almost 5 times bigger, but Japan's market cap was stable, marginal growth for decades. So please go to the next slide. So this is the valuation between US and Japan. So US market cap is around 23 trillion US dollars, net assets of 7 trillion US dollars, price to book value of 3.3, price to earnings of 24, total payout ratio of 100%, and return on equity of 16%. Compared to that, Japan's market cap is 5 trillion US dollars, net assets of 4 trillion US dollars, price to book value of 1.3, price to earnings of 13, total payout ratio of 50%, and return on equity of 8%. So actually, these figures speak for themselves. The beacon for activist investment in these figures is price to book value. There is a difference of 2, which is very huge. So this shows that US net worth hasn't changed for 30 years because they've given back to the shareholders, because they've invested into the capital investments. Compared to that, Japan's market cap was stable, but its net worth doubled. They haven't given back to the shareholders. And the total payout ratio is 50%. It is said that it is increasing, but it's still low compared to US. So if you analyze further into Japanese companies, there are 2,500 listed companies in Japan. Out of those companies, the top 100 companies account for half of the market cap with high return on equity. The rest of the companies account for other half of the market cap with low return on equity. In my point of view, for those companies with low return on equity, share buyback or dividends is one of the options to seek higher share price if they have no plans for mergers or acquisitions or capital investments. So there are many companies that price to book value is below 0.6. These companies have net cash exceeding the market cap, along with real estate, cross-shareholdings, and minimal accounts payables and high accounts receivables. Although there are many companies that EV/EBITDA is negative because its net cash is exceeding the market cap. So in my point of view, if 2 trillion US dollars out of 5 trillion US dollars net worth will be given back to the shareholder, it will kickstart economic circulation. The second reason that Japanese equities is undervalued is that, as Ochi-san may know, Japanese government is supporting corporate governance. So there are 3 guidelines that have been implemented by Japanese government. First is corporate governance code. Second is stewardship code. Third is Ito report. So these guidelines do not have any legal obligation, but it sets a guideline for Japanese management and shareholders and institutional investors to refer to, such as to cease cross-shareholdings or anti-takeover measures. So I think it will produce dramatic improvement. I won't bore you with the details. If you want to know more, please feel free to Google it. So lastly, the investors' landscape in Japan. So it may be true that Japanese were kind of reluctant to make profits by investments and to seek return on investments. And I think that's one of the reasons why Japanese shareholders were not demanding management to seek higher return on equity. And I think those Japanese who are not really demanding Japanese management, I think it's changing the circumstances with the Abenomics, corporate governance code. But even though the circumstances have changed, I don't see any investors that have done like hostile takeovers or shareholder proposals or external shareholder meetings. In my point of view, soft engagement will not change Japanese market. Harder engagement is needed for Japanese market. What sets us apart from those investors is that we have done most of it. We have done hostile takeovers, shareholder proposals, external shareholder meetings, and we have recently won one of our shareholder proposals in traditional trading company in Japan. And we are seeing great improvement on our investments, which sets us internal rate of return of almost 40%. Foreign investors are stepping into Japanese market these days, and I think Japanese market will change in like 2 to 3 years.
Wow. So, I knew you. You were off the stage. You were very quiet, but on the stage for me for the first time. You look very like your father, but you sound very like your father.
That's what people say.
You sound like my Americans. That's good. Like you fit to this conference. Do you have any comment on corporate governance issues and
Yes.
cross shareholdings?
Yes. Thank you very much for your comment. And then, as you told, 2014 we introduced Swedish code, and 2015 we introduced corporate governance code, and then we revise every year.
Yes.
And then this year we will announce the guideline for dialogue between investors and corporate. So I think, and the relationship between investors and corporate had been changing in Japan, but it's not enough. So we, the policymaker, are thinking about how to improve more and more.
Yeah.
So you're kicking ass of the management.
No. Anyway, I think that the engagement is very important. So I'd like to push.
Yeah, because largest shareholder of Japanese stock is a GPIF and Postbank. It's the people's money. So you need to, they need to listen to you, people like you, to make the most of what they have, they get, to back to general public.
So Mr. Mizuno is here.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And then he's very keen on introducing
Yes.
ESG
Yes.
or something like that.
Oh,
so yes.
Yes. I ask you different questions so later. Yes. Yeah. So she's very convincing. So we have many issues to talk. So Japan stock is very good buy. So PE ratio is very low, and Japanese companies actually making money, but stock is still not calculated level. So
Yeah. Too much retained earnings.
yes. So we need to mobilize. So last 2 years, former Prime Minister, current Finance Minister Aso-san keep coming here, and he was mainly talking about that. Mobilize Japan's money will revitalize Japan's economy. So you are a family-related person, Prime Minister, former Prime Minister. So you think the same way.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much. So another interesting and very important point you shouldn't miss, big opportunity for next Japan, is tourism. So tourism visitors to Japan is increasing tremendously in last 5-6 years. And the government is thinking about not only inviting more visitors, but also try to enhance the quality of the tourism. That's the reason why so-called IR. IR is not the investor relations. It's a integrated resort. It's a beautiful word invented by Singapore. It's a huge resort with small casino. We don't call it casino because compared to the size of the total size of the resort, the part of the casino is so small. It's more like a business, leisure, entertainment zone. So anyway, we are having that, and that impact will tremendous to the tourism, and the tourism will be the pillar of the Japanese economy. So you are the guy leading this initiative, right? Can you talk about that?
No, absolutely. I think, first of all, I'm a huge fan of Japan, but at the same time, I represent the tourism sector. And just to frame it, the tourism sector is 10% of the world's GDP. And that's actually bigger than the global automobile industry, which is at around 9.4%. And so tourism is, I think maybe we could bring up slide 3 as well. It's a very simple slide. And, as a percentage of GDP, tourism usually at the global average is about 10%. But in Japan, it's actually 6.7%. And so naturally, there's a 50% growth opportunity right there. And, I think I've been trying to promote IR in Japan for the last 12 years. And I remember 5 years back, we were still talking about the tourism number going into Japan was only 5 million. So it's actually gone up 6 times in those 5 years. But yet, even though it has gone up 6 times, a place as amazing and as great and as unique as Japan has 29 million visitors at the end of last year, whereas a little place where we have a big presence in Macau, which is only 28 square kilometer in total radius, so is effectively 4 Shinjukus, has 33 million annual visitors. And so, again, the potential is huge and for tourism into Japan. And at the same time, I think why IRs are important. I think a lot of people, like Tamura-san just said, they think IR and they think casino, but in actual fact, a integrated resort and our integrated resorts in Macau, Philippines, and the ones we're building in Europe, the gaming area, the casino area is less than 3% of the total area. So it's really about bringing in a lot of high quality hotel rooms, MICE facilities, entertainment attractions. And, I think ultimately, if you look at the tourism that is going into Japan in the near future, the bulk of it is going to be coming from Greater China, because I think in our lifetimes, Greater China will be the biggest exporter of tourists anywhere. Even that number, the 29 million number earlier, about 12 million of that is already coming from China. And that has increased 5 times as well, from around 2.5 million in the last 5 years. Chinese tourists is very important globally, whether you're going to London, New York, LA, or anywhere in the world. But even more important is getting the right type of Chinese tourists. I can say. I think our resorts, and we're very proud of that in the resorts that we built, we generally get a premium tourist compared to our competitors. So for instance, the average spend at our resorts compared to our neighbors, literally next door neighbors, is over 2 times. And the length of stay is also longer with our tourists. And so getting the right kind of tourists is important for Japan, because I came from Tokyo yesterday, and it's Golden Week. It's also Golden Week in China. The last thing you want is really to have a lot of tour groups and flag-waving people, because generally, the people who have lower disposable income, they're not going to be as sophisticated. They're not going to understand and appreciate the culture, the rich heritage. Whereas the more premium customers, they are more, I guess, educated, higher disposable income, and they are really the ones who would go to the various heritage sites and respect the culture. And I think that's why getting the premium customers are important for Japan. And the statistic I have for premium Chinese visitors, right now, that population is estimated to be 60 million people. And in about 7 years' time, is projected to grow to 120 million people. And so again, there's huge potential for growth going forward.
So you promise us you bring only the good ones. So quieter, bigger spender, and Japanese
Respectful,
culture respected.
humble.
That's good.
Yes.
But please keep in mind the fact that it's eye-opening. Tourism. We tend to underestimate impact of the tourism. It's as big as car industry, 10% of the GDP. Japan's GDP is around $5 trillion US. So that means 500 billion industry is coming up from Japan. Because as he has mentioned, people say Japan has everything, food, culture, nature, climate, infrastructure, and safety. So very interesting industry. So you're an expert. Can you follow up with his comment?
Yes. I'm convinced that the Japanese version of IR will bring a great success. Because, as Tamura-san mentioned, the impact on the Japanese economy is very huge. I will show you some data. First, one permanent resident in Japan consume about $11,000 to $12,000 in 1 year. And if 7.9 inbound tourists come to Japan, we can compensate for the annual consumption. This is very big, huge impact. And also, checking the data, last year, the amount of consumption by foreign tourists was $40 billion. And we expect that the number will increase to $80 billion in 2020. And also, according to our simulation, the production inducement effect of Japanese IR is at least $60 billion. And also, the economic ripple effect per year is about $20 billion. So the impact is very huge. And another point is that Japanese IR will be the catalyst for Japan to get out of a deflationary spiral. Because in Japan, the service sector accounts for about 70% of total economy, but the productivity of the service sector in Japan is about half compared with the United States. That is the reason why we are suffering from deflation. The reason why the productivity is very low is that despite the fact that we offer the best service in the world, but we don't set appropriate price. For example, at the cost of $100, you can stay in a sufficiently good hotel in Japan, and the hotel offers 2 meals. On the other hand, the other day, Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, visited China. And I heard that the room charge was $50,000.
Yeah,
so yeah, it's very expensive. So I think the Japanese version of IR will be the catalyst for Japan to get out of the deflation. So I believe the IR will bring a great success.
Good. It's becoming your show. So I fall in love yesterday in Rodeo Drive with this necktie. Do you know how much does it cost? So I fall in love with this tie. Without asking price, I give the guy the credit card, and I was shocked. So it was 4,000 US, this necktie. It never happened in Japan. So pricing is very important to get out of the deflation. So you have to take note that tourism-related sector is a good buy as well.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Prime Minister Abe has a strong initiative of promoting IR. But since I'm here, I'm watching Bloomberg, CNBC, and many global media is talking about the end of Abe administration.
Really?
So I think it's fake news. It's a difficult question to ask, but you're insider.
No,
So how stable Mr. Abe is?
I'm next to insiders.
Yes.
I think, first of all, we accomplished the recovery of Japan's economics in the past 5 years. And then the situation of employment improved a lot. Let me show you one number. When the working age population declined by 4.5 million in the past 5 years. 4.5 million. On the other hand, workforce increased by 2.5 million. There's 7 million gap. It means that the work style and then the lifestyle of Japanese have dramatically changed. So 2 million women, the person who work, the women who work increased by 2.22 million in the past 5 years. So, I mean, the Japanese people feel that Japan is now improving. But on the other hand, in the United States, they told that Abe ends. It doesn't happen.
Okay.
No, recent support rate, according to Nikkei, that was 43%.
Still popular.
Still popular, and it unchanged if we compare with the last month. But we have to explain the policy framework more and more, and we have troubles in a bureaucracy system. So we have to solve that problem as soon as possible. That is our task.
But basically, it's a fake news. Fake news.
Yeah.
He never ends.
No, never ends.
3 more years to go.
Never ends.
Thank you. We are very convinced.
Yeah.
Insider. So,
Next to
Thank you.
insider. Yeah.
so next, I want to ask you another tough question, and that is the concern of the global investor to Japan. It's a population issue. Population issue. So, since I'm here, I'm asked almost the identical question. If Japan is ready for immigration, I mean taking people from outside. So Japan is actually taking people from outside, ready for immigration. Policymaker, Minister Ochi-san, どうですか?
Mr. Abe told that we in Japan will not accept pure immigration. Pure immigration in the Abe administration. He said that. But in fact, the number of foreigners who live in Japan increased from 2 million to 2.5 million.
It's not illegal immigrants, no.
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 No. And then the workforce, foreign workforce, increased, doubled in the past 5 years. Nowadays, 1.3 million foreigners are working here. And then,
Oh, it's 1% of the Japan's population.
yes.
Okay.
And then the historic thing is that in this February, in the Council on Economic and Fiscal Policy, Mr. Abe orders to think how to increase foreign specialists who work in Japan.
Oh, okay.
So
Technical interns. And,
technical and professional. So we are now talking about that, and perhaps we will make a new policy to introduce lots of more and more foreigners to Japan.
oh, good. So
This
more
is first time, yeah.
foreign labor is coming, actually.
Yeah.
Not pure immigration, but you are taking more people from outside.
Yes.
Professionals.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So going back to the IR, so I have a pure question. So IR is big, so huge, 50 hectares, 100 hectares. And you need to hire some of them are good English speakers. What do you think about how many do you hire for one IR employment?
Well, I think it depends on what city, but for a major urban city, I think the investment on the IR is going to be over 10, 11 billion US dollars. And the direct employment that it will create with the IR from the building and the operations of it is going to be over 30,000 people, just direct employment.
People.
But of course, you know, our philosophy is always to benefit all the community and all the small, medium businesses as well. So the indirect benefit is also huge. But of course, there are, you know, our company philosophy is, a lot of it is based on, you know, Japanese culture, Kaizen, in terms of continuous improvement, dedication to quality. But at the same time, with such a new enterprise and a new industry coming into Japan, I'm sure we will be bringing in a lot of foreign and international people to train up the people. And that's the experience that we've had in both Macau and Manila. So I think that will also help the English-speaking, you know, and also immigration. But I think over the last few years, Japan, the younger generation, is already much more international, and the English-speaking standard is much higher.
Aya-san and I are stationed in Singapore. Singapore is very, you know, the other way. So Japan, 1% is foreign labor, but in case of Singapore, 40% is foreign labor. So we are living in a very diverse country. And yes, as Prime Minister has mentioned, he tried to push up the women, you know, positions. But you're female and stationed in Singapore, so such a diverse, a lot of foreign labor place. So do you think Japan is ready to take more people from outside?
I'm not really sure. So, because, you know, like I said, I'm very bullish on Japanese equities for a few years, but I'm very bearish on Japanese equities for a longer term. And the reason why is the decreasing population. So I think one of the policies that Prime Minister Abe should strongly push is immigration policy. And from my family background, so my grandfather used to be Taiwanese, and which makes me a quarter Taiwanese by blood. And you know, when Taiwan was the territory of Japan, kids born in Taiwan got Japanese passport. So my grandfather also got Japanese passport, and he went to middle school in Japan. He served the war as Japanese army. But when Japan lost the war, they revoked his passport. Then he met my grandmother, and he got his passport back. So because of this background, I don't really think nationality matters in this global economy. Anyone with any nationality who works hard for Japan is very important. And when you look at the population distribution, it is said that in 2060, the population will be 80 million and working population of 30 million. If you also, you know, look at the tax side, you know, $2 trillion is the tax revenue, and $2.4 trillion is tax expense. And half of the tax expense is cost of social security. So to sustain economical growth for long term in Japan, I think immigration policy is like the only option.
So, you know, he said not pure immigration. So he's in the politically not easy position to mention clearly, but I feel that, you know, he will be pushing to make Japan more diverse society, welcoming talents to Japan. So is that right?
Yes. The figure of inbound tourists increased dramatically. 5 years ago, only 8 million. Now there's 29. And 2020, 40 million. And the objective is 2030, 60 million. It gives me energy because we can welcome lots of foreigners as a tourist. So we can change. So in terms of immigrant or foreign people who work in Japan, we can change how to, when we learn how to welcome them, we can change. This is my
Yes.
feeling.
As you know very well, we have 8 million empty houses nationwide. So a bunch of places for stay. So some of them are very nice, beach house, riverside house, mountain house. Why not? So we talk a lot about immigration and IR. So for that, most important relationship, diplomatically and economically, I think it's Japan-China relations. So, and for the future success, as she has mentioned, without doing something, short-term Japan looks great. Baseline economy right now looks good, but mid-term, long-term, we need to do something. But we are lucky, for the IR as well. We have the biggest body next door. I mean, our location. We cannot relocate ourselves, but we are lucky. We are next to the biggest economy, will be the biggest economy in the world. And it's the already most populous country in the world, China. And again, Ochi-san, you've been to China, Japan, high-level economic talks. And I think you feel the positivity to countries' relationship. So do you think China-Japan economic ties will be stronger and that bring huge impact to revitalize Japan? Can you talk about that?
Yes, answer is yes. So this Japan-China high-level economic dialogue was held for first time in 8 years. So our relationship had been not good, but it became very good since 1 year ago, when Japanese officials and important politicians attended the One Belt, One Road Forum held in China. That was last May. So we think that the good partnership between Japan and China makes us a better economic situation. Yes.
Thank you. So, Lawrence-san, I heard you are in the very important position in China, politically and business-wise. So, can you touch upon this issue from your perspective?
No, I think China, of course, is a rising power. It has a huge population, 1.4 billion people, and I think something that not everybody.
Can you talk about your background?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am very lucky also to be a national member of the CPPCC. So it's hard to explain, but it's an advisory body that's equivalent to the Chinese Parliament, and I'm also a vice.
Advising to Xi Jinping, yeah.
Not directly, but I write papers. I don't know if they read it. But also I'm a vice chairman of the China National Chamber of Commerce. So I think what the strategy of China, what they really want to do is to be inclusive. I think in the new world, and as we have seen in the U.S. in terms of protectionism, what China wants to do is to be more inclusive. And I think a better relations between China and Japan ultimately is going to be great for both countries in terms of trade. But the thing, China has 1.4 billion people, but the thing not everybody knows is the fact that the savings rate in China is over 40%. So people save 40% of their money. And to put that into context, in the US, the savings rate is less than 1%. And that's why going forward, what will power the global economy and global consumption is very, very clear.
So I go to China several times. I'm at the same time fellow at NUS, National University of Singapore, Suzhou Research Institute. Suzhou is a so-called second-tier city, but second-tier city in China is big city, 15 million population, but it's second-tier city. So I go to Shanghai, Beijing regularly. So it's very eye-opening. We shouldn't underestimate China. Of course, they have a size, population, economy, and they are getting more money. But technology-wise, I'm amazed. In Shanghai, I'm the only guy carrying cash. They watch me like a Stone Age guy. Oh, this guy's using paper. And many EV is running around, and some of them are quasi self-driving, and the largest drone supplier is Chinese. Largest EV company is not Tesla, it's BYD. So amazing thing is happening. So Kumagai-san, as a viewpoint of the economist, Japan, China can be complementary, so we can work together.
Yes, basically Japan and China are complementary, and I think Japanese companies will win if IoT is widespread, because Japan is very strong in the manufacturing sector. And I'd like to show you a video with which we can recognize that how high or how great our technology is. Please play the video 1. This is the video of magic metal. And magic metal is produced by Takada Mold Manufacturing Company in Niigata Prefecture. This is not magic. The level of technical of our company is very high in the manufacturing sector. And yes. Sorry, that's Japanese. And the digital-related market size in Japan will increase to $220 billion in 2020 with an annual growth rate of 9%. Among that, the IoT-related sector will increase to $100 billion and with an annual growth rate of 16%. And especially the industrial robotic sector in Japan will be very promising because among 10 top countries, in the global 10 top countries, 7 countries are Japanese company. And in addition to that, the youth unemployment rate in Japan is very low. It's about 4%. On the other hand, in the United States, it's 10%. France, above 20%. So from the viewpoint of culture, we are very open to introducing robots. So in the robotics sector or IoT sector, Japanese companies will be very strong.
So we can help each other,
yes.
China, Japan.
Yes.
So we can do give and takes.
Yes.
Complementary.
Yes, we are strong in the manufacturing sector. Yes.
Okay, thanks so much. So good. China, Japan is also promising. So integration of two big economy, second largest and third largest, will be getting together. So that can be a great impact for Japan's economy. So Ochi-san, we are very lucky to have you. That means I have to ask you another tough question. So that is about BOJ. So you are the BOJ policy committee member. So we talk a lot about Japan's monetary policy. So they are already starting to find out a way to exit or still do some more monetary policy, easing. So you are in the committee. I'm sure that you're not allowed to share everything, but can you talk a little bit about the BOJs in the future?
Yes. Last month, April 9th, the Governor Kuroda reappointed. At that moment, Prime Minister Abe and Governor Kuroda reaffirmed the joint statement between BOJ and the government signed in 2013. That said that the price stability target of 2%. So it means that we continue the current policy and framework. And then under the current monetary policy of under the joint statement, they are the sign that Japanese economy have entered to new phase toward overcoming and deflation. So, such as positive output gap. In Japan, GDP gap is plus. I mean, the demand is more than the supply. So, to your question, I don't know the exit strategy. So we continue.
Good.
We continue our current policy. That is the answer.
Good for you, Aya-san, right?
Well, that means, you know, stock's going to be increasing.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, that's very good news. But yeah, I think every investor's question is, you know, the answers that is going to be very tough one. So, yeah, but yeah, I don't really want to ask him many times how you exit. But yeah, I think that's like the most concern from all the investors, because when you exit, that means, you know, for the stocks, it is going to decrease. So, you know, for the investors, I think no exit is good answer.
So we would like to, the target of 2% inflation is very important. And last Friday, Mr. Kuroda said at the press conference, as a personal view, we think that target will possibly be accomplished in fiscal year 2019.
2019,
Yes.
before Olympics.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, yes. So do you think price will be going up until that time?
Yes, but before that, I'd like to mention BOJ's policy. And I think the BOJ would like to go to the exit gradually. Because I expect that the BOJ to change the policy goal in two aspects. And the first aspect is the time horizon. At this time, the target is within 2 years, but they would like to change it to the medium to long term. This is the first aspect. And the second aspect is the so-called OK rule. Their official target is 2% inflation, but they would like to introduce OK rule in the Gulf. If the if the price will not increase to 2%, if increase to 1%, it's okay. So the BOJ will going to the exit. So the meeting held last Friday was the first step of this two aspect change of the policy goal, I expect.
So gradually.
Gradually, yes,
getting
gradually.
out. Interesting. So last point, sorry to keep you waiting so long, but you know, you and as you have mentioned here, very successful entrepreneurs coming up, startups in finance, in IoT, and in teleconference, and you know, who graduate from IPO, then start venture capital. So I think you know, young people is getting more enterprising, and the new business is more to come up. So can you touch upon people like you?
Yes, so since we're kind of running out of time, just want to make a summary remark. So I feel that there are so many unwritten stories about the changes that are happening in Japan. The first being the rise of more international-minded entrepreneurs that are here in the audience today. We have my friend Mashita-san, who runs a big video conferencing company out of Singapore. My good friend Teru Sato, who's one of the most active investors, venture investors in India, and entrepreneurs like Aya, who is trying to disrupt the Japanese equity markets. So I think that will really be a driving force in Japan's change. And then secondly, I think large Japanese companies are being forced to change. So I mentioned a lot of statistics about the undervaluation, but we've seen that for the last 15, 20 years. Your father was presenting that figures too. The difference this time is that companies are really being forced to change. So we, the life insurance sector, we are the second largest shareholders in the Japanese economy after the pension funds. And we are really being pushed to exercise our voting rights in a way that is in the best interest of shareholders. On the other side, from the executive management side, I sat on a board of a billion-dollar company, and you really feel the change there. More independent directors, the executives being really afraid of making sure that they're making the right choices to improve the shareholders' rights. So I think Japan's always been undervalued. Everyone has always talked about catalyst, and now that is really happening under Prime Minister Abe, because more entrepreneurs, more large company executives being forced to manage in a way that's in the best interest of shareholders. There's more partnerships between large companies and startups. Large companies are buying out venture companies like in the US and China. So I think all that combined, there's this, I'd almost say, titanic shift happening in Japan that you don't necessarily read in the papers, but really pushes forward and opens up the opportunities in the Japanese economy. And my final point that Kumagai-san mentioned, with the rise of artificial intelligence, I think the ultimate solution, a lot of it has to do with robotics and manufacturing, because it's not really about computing. The software part will become commoditized, but the end applications will be in the services sectors, the manufacturing sectors, agriculture sector, construction sector, and everywhere at the end touch point between the human society, there's a hardware aspect to it. So Japan is among the most sophisticated countries with regards to robotics and hardware. Plus, you have that issue of not having to worry about youth unemployment and losing jobs. So I think all that in context, I'm also very bullish about Japan with the entrepreneurs and everything we've talked about today.
Thank you so much. So we have 3 minutes to go, so I give you 45 minutes last sales talk of you. So from you,
Yes.
last 30 minutes, okay?
Yes, sir. I think Japan is a wise capitalism. First, income gap is very small. And second, healthy problem and social problem we don't have. And the third point is longevity. There are many longevity companies. About 2.6 million companies continued more than 100 years. So we have sustainability. So please invest in Japan.
Thank you.
I'm super bullish on Japan. I think it's a country that's rich in culture, history, and heritage. And I think in terms of the inflation rate, 2%. I think the persistence of it, from a foreigner standpoint, it has to be related to confidence. And what better as a catalyst to improve that confidence than to improve in tourism and have large foreign investment. So that's my sales pitch.
So you do that. Okay.
Okay, I will show you this one phrase which was made by Mr. Abe before in the United States. That is, Japan may be aging and losing its population, but these are incentive for us. It meant that we will always be motivated to strengthen the productivity. So we are very keen on higher and higher productivity of our enterprise and the society. So please trust us. Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, I'm very bullish on Japanese equities, and I think circumstances have completely changed. When my father was doing activist investment in early 2000, there were no corporate governance code, there were no Ito report, there were no stewardship code. But the Ito report says that the companies should accomplish 8% return on equity. So it's like the first time that the government talked about the return on equity. So, I'll be also one of the person that will try to change Japan, and please buy Japanese equities.
Yes, so a lot of opportunities, unwritten stories. So please, if you haven't been in Japan recently, come visit, talk to entrepreneurs, executives, experience the services, and feel the change and look for untapped opportunities.
Thank you. So now you're very convinced that you are the luckiest guy. You are sitting in the best panel and you're finding the best opportunity for your money. So buy Japan. This is my final. Thank you so much.
Thank you.